Hey YouTube, I'll show you a quick video on how to set up the DHCP failover on a Windows Server 2012 R2 version. So let's get right into it. So basically the DHCP failover, this is a feature in Server 2012 R2 which provides basically redundancy and load balancing for the DHCP services. So like in a production scenario wherein you have a primary DHCP server, and if one server fails down, now there should be another server which would take care of the DHCP services in this event. So we can create a redundancy by means of creating another DHCP server, and in order to configure that, you need to configure a DHCP failover. So in this quick video, I'll show you how to configure load balance and hot standby types of DHCP failover. So for the laboratory purposes, I have already created a two server. This is my primary DHCP server. As you can see, if you go to the tools menu and then DHCP, and from the DHCP console, as you can see, I have here in the IPv4, I've already configured the scope, so it's already existing. Now on the second Oracle VirtualBox that I have created, this one, this is the secondary server. Now if you go to select tools and then DHCP, so it's still not configured yet. So the prerequisite of this tutorial, you should have two server, and on the one with the primary, and for the secondary, I would assume that you have already added or installed the DHCP server on both. Okay. Now to configure it on the primary DHCP server under IPv4, and I'm going to use the existing scope of 192.168.1.0. Just right click into it and select configure failover. Now just take note that for every scope you have, you can configure just one failover. Now this is the introduction for the DHCP failover. If you have multiple scopes, you can select it by selecting this one. If you only have one, you can unselect it and then choose the scope that you'd like to set the DHCP failover, and then hit next. Now this is the specify the partner server to use for failover. Now you can provide the host name or IP address of the partner DHCP server where you're going to set up the failover configuration. Now you can select from the list, or you can just simply add server, and then you could search or manually add the secondary server which you're going to configure. Now in my case, it's under my Active Directory. The host name of the computer object that I'll be adding is mat2. Just click OK here after searching, then click OK. Now hit next. Once you have specified the partner server to use for failover, hit next. Now this is the configuration failover window. Now for the relationship name, you can just put in any name, like let's say server A to server B. So just any descriptive name that you could put into. For the maximum client lead time, this is how many hours the secondary failover would provide its services normally in a production environment. So Microsoft recommends at least an hour. So I'm going to leave it that way. Now for the mode, this is where you could configure either load balance or hot standby. For the mode load balance, from the name itself, load balance, you could configure the local server or the primary DHCP server to provide services to 50% of the computer objects. Now for the partner server, you could configure it another 50%. So from the name itself, load balance, it's 50-50. Now for the state switchover interval, now this is for how many minutes it would wait until the secondary failover gets activated. Now, especially for production environment, this is very crucial. That means, let's say if you put it into 60 minutes, even the primary DHCP server already failed, or if it's already uncontactable, it would still wait for another 60 minutes before it would activate its services. So that's a no-no for a production environment. So let's say, for example, in this lab, I'm going to put in 5 minutes. Now you could either enable authentication. That's basically a sort of password only. I could put in enable it or disable it. Now for the hot standby, this is the configuration. So hot standby configuration, this is the role of the partner, which means that instead of load balance, the partner server will only gets activated when the primary once the primary DHCP server is uncontactable. So it would once it's not once it's down, the hot standby will get activated. Now you could configure the addresses reserved for standby server in terms of percentage. So let's say you have more computer objects, you could either you could increase this. For this example, I would leave it as is for 5%. Now this is the same state switchover interval. You could also again enable the message authentication, so sort of a password. So I could set it on hot standby, hit next. So this is the configuration failover summary. So this is the scope, this is the relationship name, the descriptive name, the maximum client lead time, mode, and state switchover interval. The role of the partner is server partner standby, and the address reserved for standby is 5%. When I hit finish, it would progress the configuration, and it would show the logs if it's successful or failed. So in this example, it's all successful. It adds a scope, it disables a scope on partner server, it creates the configuration, yada yada. So just hit close. Now you would know that it's already configured once you hit the scope and then hit properties. You'll have a failover tab here, and it would show the configuration that we have created. Also from IPv4, you could hit properties, and from here you have another tab created wherein this is the description of the one that we've configured, the state of the server, partner server, its mode. You could also edit it, and you could view the configuration and then make any changes. And on the secondary server, we could take a look at it and see if it already replicates. Okay, so after rebooting the secondary server and then opening the DHCP, from tools and then selecting DHCP. Now, as you can see here, you already have, okay, sorry, let me switch to the other server. Okay, so once opening tools, DHCP, it's already reflected, but it's not yet authorized. So here you just have to click on manage authorized servers and then add the IP, or type the name of the DHCP server which we're going to authorize, which is 221. Okay. Okay, so what I did, I restarted the secondary server, and then from here again, I selected manage authorized servers. A while ago, it said it cannot contact the Active Directory because I was not logged in Active Directory. I was logged in into local, so I log into to my domain, and then from here I was able to authorize the secondary DHCP server, which is MAT2 IP address of 192.168.1.221. And as you can see here, the name server host has already been added to the list of DHCP servers, and on the secondary server it reflected the scope or the configuration that's configured in the primary DHCP. Okay, so basically that's how you configure a redundancy on the DHCP server failover. You could set up either load balance, wherein the primary and the secondary DHCP server would share the balance, the load 50-50, or you could configure it on hot standby, wherein the failover server will activate once the primary is unable to reach. So that's all. Please share your ideas and experience in setting up the DHCP failover on the comment section below, and see you again on the next one. Thank you.